All right. Let's see if we can get the stream booted up here. See if we can get this started here. All right, I think we're ready to go. Hi everyone, welcome to the Evil Geniuses Bleed Blue podcast. I'm gonna move my camera a little bit here, where we talk about pretty much everything Evil Geniuses related. And yeah, this is a little bit different. Doing a live stream is definitely, um, much different compared to what we normally do. But I think going forward, this is going to be the way that we are going to try to do things. If there ends up being some complications with it, we will change it. I'm also currently working on figuring out when would be the best time to do these in terms of like a stream and then post things on YouTube. It's going to change the schedule a little bit. So yeah, I'm still trying to figure out days. I'm hoping to maybe do Saturdays, but I'm gonna have to talk to Kurrent and find out basically. And it's just kind of something that's gonna be a little bit fluid for now. So bear with me in this process, but we will get it all together at some point, and hopefully things will start to run a little bit more smoothly. I'd kind of had it down to a science, so mixing it up is gonna take a little bit of time. But we will get there, and also I just felt like it would be a nice thing to do since we haven't had the podcast in a couple of weeks. I actually recorded an episode last week, at least for everything but Counter Strike, but ended up kind of scrapping it, except for one section of the video that I'm gonna have to edit down and post. I'll probably post it as a YouTube video because it pertains to Evil Geniuses as an organization and kind of their why I think their fall from grace is essentially probably the worst, or the greatest fall off in terms of going from being the best to being the worst in esports history. I think this organization has just plummeted in terms of its reputation and its standing and what it means to be a part of Evil Geniuses. And so that's kind of what that's going to be about. So I'll post that most likely this week, maybe even probably a little bit after this podcast gets posted, because I'm actually going to try to post this immediately after I stream this. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, obviously it's been a little bit of time, so I appreciate everybody being so patient. But we're finally here. We are ready to do a podcast, and there's actually a lot to talk about with pretty much every single esport. We have League of Legends news that's very drastic. That came out of nowhere. We have updates for the Dota 2 team. We have VCT. In terms of the last time that I recorded an episode regarding the VCT team, I think it has been 3 weeks, maybe, or at least 3 games, because they played 100 Thieves on Monday, I think, and then um, like a week or two ago, like 2 weeks ago, or no, it was probably like 1 week ago, and then they played. Oh no, it was 2 weeks ago because then they played Crew, and now they played Furia. So we have some updates to do there. It's probably a good thing recording this for Valorant now because the what I talked about in last week's episode was mostly negative, honestly. Um, so better news this time, but it's not. There's still issues. So yeah, lots to talk about. We're obviously going to get into the Counter Strike topics as well. There's not really too much with Counter Strike. Lots of PR. Um, a lot of community opinions came out recently about the Counter Strike team, and so we'll get into that as well. Maybe touch on EG Black a little bit, but yeah, should be good. And basically, how this is going to work, guys, is after I get through the League of Legends, Dota 2, and Valorant sections, I'll go to a quick break, and I'll bring Current on, and then once I get that set up, I will, just bring it out of intermission, and we'll start with the Counter Strike section. So that's kind of how things are going to operate with this episode. So without further ado, let's get started with League of Legends. Um, I'll do roster shakeup, because this is not what anybody was expecting to hear from League of Legends. I wasn't expecting to do anything related to League of Legends until probably getting close to the start of the summer split. But some pretty terrifying news has been released regarding the LCS team. Puts a lot of things under question for those who don't know. Um, on April 22nd, literally yesterday, they came out with an official statement saying LCS update. Evil Geniuses takes great pride in our commitment to competitive performance and talent development. After the outcome of our 2023 spring split season, we will be making roster changes that fully align with this commitment. We will continue to share updates as we look forward to building up our team and preparing for summer split. So that's all they said. Very vague. Doesn't really give a whole lot of information. But there were even rumors before this official post that a massive shakeup was about to happen within the squad, which is very unexpected when you consider, um, at the end of the playoffs. Yes, it was a disappointing result versus Golden Guardians, for sure. They definitely didn't play very well. They looked out of it, but I mean, overall, you kind of left the season thinking, okay, well, not a great result. They weren't locked in, but there was a lot of external things going on this split, not just in regards to COVID and getting players in and out of the roster and whatnot, and playing from home, playing in the stadium, or in the arena or whatever. But then on top of that, all the news that was coming out about EG, about the bad press regarding the whole Danny situation, him becoming a streamer. You had news coming out about EG losing a lot of sponsors. You had news coming out that EG doesn't treat their players very well in multiple different esports. Richard Lewis posted an article regarding a lawsuit from one of the ex Dota 2 players. You had news about how poorly they had treated the Counter Strike team, and so there was a lot of bad press just in general surrounding the organization, and it really was hitting hard around February and March. Um, and so ultimately, you leave the split thinking it wasn't fantastic by any means, but I think they just need to, just have a little bit of silence, just let them take some time off, come back to the game, start preparing for the summer split, and then things will be better, right? You just need to give this team a little bit more time, and things will shape up eventually because all these players are talented enough. And on paper, this is definitely a roster that could have competed for the number one spot very easily. Definitely had the potential to do that. Um, However, the rumors that were coming out were that the rumors are basically that everybody except for Jojo Pyun is potentially leaving the roster. So Inspired, Vulcan, Someday, and FBI will not continue in the main roster of EG. Apparently, Inspired is already looking and exploring options in the LEC and the LCS. So that is the rumor. It's not confirmed, but that's the rumor. And I just look, it's difficult to really. I mean, obviously, just this is terrible. I mean, this is horrible. None of these players are bad players. I don't even. There's no justifiable reason to get rid of all of these players, unless it's just some type of, you know, the players are just having such internal turmoil between each other that it has to get blown up. It's they're not gelling very well as people. But I don't think that's the case. I mean, and Vulcan and Inspired and JoJo have been a part of the team for a while now. Um, I don't really think FBI and Someday are personalities that clash with other people. They seem pretty grounded. They work hard. FBI is very talented, and some days, he's fantastic. So it's really like there's no strategical reason for this. It doesn't make sense from a strategic standpoint to make such a drastic move. Um, and so I even tweeted this, but it makes me question. Okay, well, what are the other reasons? If it's not like if I'm just trying to play dumb and I'm trying to just look at strategically why would this happen, and it's not making sense. Okay, well then what's the obvious reason for why this is happening? Well, like I said earlier, EG has been losing a lot of sponsors. They lost their Monster Energy sponsor that they had for multiple years and was very important to them. And while they did sign a deal with Chevron, which was very controversial, you know, they've lost much more money and much more sponsors than they've gained. So and this isn't just particular to Evil Geniuses. I mean, TSM is shutting down operations for a lot of their esports division. CLG had to get bought out by NRG. The recession, the esports recession that's going on currently, is very much real. It's impacting every organization. There are layoffs all over the place, and it stems from these organizations wanting to get the best players, and because they want to get the best players, they overspend for these players. They've been doing it for years. This was a problem that started happening around maybe 2015, 2016. Maybe that was a little bit, maybe 2015 is a little bit too early, but very shortly after 2016 or so, organizations were really spending much more money on players than they should have been, and it's finally catching up to them. And so it's not only that, but also how the economy is right now. It's just not in the best position. It's very volatile, and so you're seeing a lot of these esports orgs. They're finally cracking. They're finally having to make up for all of those mistakes, that they've made in the past. And so to me, this sounds like EG just doesn't have the money anymore. I mean, guys, look at what happened with Cloud9 and Valorant, where they had to get rid of the best player in the world and then tried to play it off as a role issue. Nobody's going to admit that this is the reason, but I think it's quite clear this has to do with the recession. It's quite clear they just don't have the money potentially to pay Inspired what he needs to be paid, to pay Someday, to pay FBI, right? I'm sure Jojo Pyun is not only does he probably he's been with EG the whole time, and that's the organization that gave him a shot, but I'm sure to some degree, right? He wants to stay there, but he's also probably very affordable. He probably isn't getting paid nearly as much as some of these other players, and you know, so I would imagine it has to do with pay. Vulcan is probably not super cheap either. He's a relatively experienced LCS player, very good at his role. So I don't know. I'm really thinking that this might have to do with um, the recession, and so it also has to do with wanting to do this, but not wanting to leave LCS like CLG has been forced to do. Um, and that TSM is potentially doing. EG's not going to want to leave the LCS. They just joined it. It's been their most successful venture as of the past couple of years, honestly. Dota 2 hasn't been. It's been good, but it's been consistently good, but they haven't won any big events. I mean, I say that I think they might have. Well, I don't know if they won a major relatively recently, but I know they went to a couple major finals, but in Dota 2, but I don't know if they've won a major in a while. So look, the Dota 2 division isn't the problem, but I think look, the Counter Strike team has been abysmal. The Valorant squad isn't winning anything, or even close to winning anything. They're probably not even going to make playoffs during this split. Um, it's just they just don't want to leave the LCS. No organization wants to leave the LCS, and it's very easy once you pay for your LCS slot. You just want to stay in the door for as long as you can, hoping that your slot will be worth more in the future. And so this is clearly when you invest into the LCS, when you get a team in the LCS, the strategy is hold on to this slot for as long as you can. Hopefully the value of the slot rises, and potentially then if you have to, and you think that maybe it's peaked or whatever, then you sell out of the spot, or you at least attempt to. So that's kind of how this works. To me, this looks like they care more about the recession and they care about keeping their foot in the door of the LCS. That's what this looks like to me. This doesn't look like anything to me like when they say EG takes great pride in our commitment to competitive performance and talent development. Like that sentence alone just reeks of PR bullshit. Like EG takes great pride in our commitment to competitive performance. Really. Competitive performance. Evil geniuses. Fuck no you don't. You don't give a shit. You care about that, but that priority is like sixth on the list. Like clearly, if you're doing this, this is not a move you make. This isn't a decision you make when you want to take into account competitive performance as a top priority. It's not. If it's a top priority, you keep this roster. This is a very talented LCS roster. This is a roster that, given more time, can win the LCS, can go to Worlds and do some damage. Like, this doesn't make any sense to get rid of all of these players. They're all incredibly talented, some of the best in their roles. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to get rid of this. So that reeks of, that alone is just clearly you don't care about competitive performance. You don't. And look, I could take this farther and look at other esports, teams that they have. Like, for example, Dota 2, right? You're thinking, well, the Dota 2 roster is fantastic, right? They're a young core of, South American players, and they seem to be a very, very good Dota 2 team. Well, unfortunately, guys, the last two times that the Dota 2 team, the EG Dota 2 team, has played the previous like the core of what EG's roster used to be, the Shopify Rebellion team, they've lost. They've lost to Shopify Rebellion. They lost to them in the major, and they just lost to them in the DreamLeague. So you downgraded. You downgraded in Dota 2. At least as of right now, you've downgraded. The Valorant roster is nowhere near competing for playoffs, let alone a championship. And it never has been good. The Evil Geniuses Valorant roster has never been one that competes for big events or has even gone to a big event based off of qualification. Um, you know, the Counter Strike team has been abysmal for years. You had a failed project that it just there is nothing. There's nothing. The only thing that EG has that's winning championships at the moment, besides the LCS team that from last year, is really their fighting game division with Sonic Fox and Dickhill Sage. Other than that, they don't really have anything going for them. So I refuse to believe that competitive performance is a top priority for this organization. I just don't believe it's true. And then talent development, which I don't know how you can possibly say that you care about talent development when you've destroyed Danny's career. When you've absolutely and remember, this is the LCS update, and you're going to talk about talent development. You've ruined Danny's career. You have put that man under an unbelievable amount of distress and just treated him like shit. So I don't want to hear that you care about talent development. That's bullshit. That is bullshit. You don't care about talent development. You care about your brand. You care about which somehow I don't even know how that even makes sense. How do you care about your brand and then treat it this poorly? It doesn't make sense. These people don't understand how esports works and whatnot. It's just obvious. Um, you know, uh, you overworked Danny. You didn't know how to deal with his mental health problems, and you didn't treat it. You didn't react in the best way possible, and you've hurt a young man's, not just his career, but his life. Um, and for that, you will never be forgiven. You don't deserve to be forgiven for that. And so that just reeks of just how insensitive can you be to say talent development is something you care about after treating Danny the way that you did. JoJo has developed. He's probably one of the only players that has actually developed under Evil Geniuses across all of their esports, right? Like, yes, the Dota 2 team is very young, but the Dota 2 team was already good. Those players were already really, really good when they were signed. EG hasn't developed them in any way. I mean, they've given them financial backing, but those players were already had that talent. They were already performing extremely well. That team, some of those players beat EG in the last TI. So I don't want to hear that that's talent development just because you have young players. You didn't develop those talent, you just bought them. In the Counter Strike team, right? Like, what you've developed who have you actually developed to get better? I mean, I would have said a couple months ago Wiz, because Wiz consistently got better under the EG Black banner, but you've moved him up to the main roster and you've shown a disregard for Wiz's well-being, and you've placed him in a situation where there was essentially no opportunity to succeed. So there's still time for Wiz, but you didn't treat him like you should treat young talent. You moved Hext onto the roster and then admit after changing his role entirely and then removing him from the roster that, yeah, maybe it was too early to move up Hext, right? Maybe we did that too early and we shouldn't have done that. Like, you've made constant mistakes. When Hex was getting bashed or when the report came out that Hex had said something racist in his past. Where did Nicole say anything to say, oh no, listen, it's our fault, we didn't vet him properly, but he's not like that anymore. He's changed, he's evolved as a person. That happened years ago. He's a different person now, and all. You didn't say anything. He had to come out with his own statement, and he took it hard. He immediately moves down to EG Black, and he's performing much better. It's clear that has to deal with mental health, and EG's how EG has handled mental health when it comes to their young players has been abysmal. And so it's a miracle JoJo is doing as well as he is probably within this organization, just knowing or just hearing all of the things that have happened with this organization, and how they treat their players sometimes, oftentimes, I should say. And it's not a bash on the coaching staff. I don't necessarily have like a bash on any of the coaching staff or even the players. It's more due to the management. It's the management and some of the support staff and the people that get empowered in the organization. I know that's a little bit of a rant on the organization overall, but I think it all kind of falls under, why this LCS update post is just completely insensitive and is just a lie. It's just a lie. Like, I don't know what the reasons are, but if I had to take a guess, I would say it has to do with the fact that that the esports scene at the moment and all the organizations are in a recession, having to lay off people, and that they can't afford these players anymore. And I think it's also having to do with the fact that they're not just going to get rid of their LCS slot, because obviously even with these losses, because your hope is that the LCS slot is worth more in the future. It's a long-term investment, and so you're not going to get rid of that so soon. So, it's very similar to, in my mind, of like, for example, EG's been a part of the Louvre agreement with ESL. EG CSGO has been the worst team in Pro League for the past like 2 years straight, not even close. I think they've taken last place in 3 out of 4 ESL Pro Leagues. Like, but they have their foot in the door because they have the Louvre agreement deal, so they can't get. I mean, they in theory they can be kicked out, but they're not going to because they have money. So like, it's just keeping their foot in the door. That's all they care about. They just care about keeping their foot in the door, and it shows across multiple esports that that's what they care about. They don't care about competitive performance. They don't care about being the number one team in the world. If they did, they would pay the money, they would get the best players, they would form the best teams, and they would do it. They don't do it because they don't care. Or at least, even if they do care, I'm not saying they don't care entirely. They do care, but it's sixth on the list of priorities. It's not a top priority for them. And then talent development is a joke. So, uh, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty wild, post. Nobody was really expecting this, I don't think. So it's pretty shocking to see. Um, but yeah, so we'll see. I guess I imagine in the coming weeks, maybe even this week, we'll see some more information on what's going on with the LCS team, who's getting replaced, with which players, like how is this working. Um, I wonder why JoJo's the only one to remain. Is it really just because he seems to be their golden boy? If it's anything similar to what happened with Danny, I would imagine the board is just very gung ho on keeping JoJo because he is, at this point, he is Evil Geniuses. He is the brand for the LCS team. He is the face of the team. He's the guy that everyone loves, and if they got rid of JoJo, they would lose the very minimal amount of fans they already have. So, anyways, very very confusing. But we'll find out more in the next coming weeks. Briefly, going to transition into Dota 2. We've got some. I don't even know. This is mostly an update, I guess, on the Dota 2 team. When I had recorded the Dota 2 section in the previous episode last week that didn't get posted, I was kind of talking about their status right now. They're competing in the DreamLeague, or they were competing in the DreamLeague, DreamHack Dream League, which basically it had an interesting structure where there were two group stages, and essentially you had like a certain amount of teams. I can't remember the exact team count. Let's see, 4 by 4. So there was 16 teams. Yeah, it looks like there were 16 teams in the first group stage. There was eight. There were 8 teams per group, so there were 2 groups, Group A and B. The top X amount of teams, I think it was 4. Yeah, the top 4 teams from each group moved on into the second group stage. EG happened to be a part of that group. In the first group, they were in Group A, They were 10-4, tied with Shopify Rebellion, the ex-EG roster, and Gaming Gladiators, who ended up actually winning the whole event. 10-4. They were all 10-4. And then TSM was the fourth team, who was 6-8, but they still made it out of Group A. And then Group B was Team Liquid, Tundra, Beast Coast, and OG. And those were the 8 teams that then got moved into Group Stage 2. Group Stage 2 happened. EG started off not. They started off okay, but when I was recording the podcast, their next match was against Team Liquid, and I had already kind of prefaced that Team Liquid was probably like a top 2, top 3 Dota 2 team right now. They are very, very good. And so I was a little anxious going into that game, but I was hopeful that maybe they would be able to make it to the playoffs because the top 4 teams, the top 4 teams out of the 8 in Group Stage 2 make it to playoffs. EG did not. They were not able to do that. They went 2-5 in terms of their series because they were best of threes. They were best of threes in Group Stage 2, and EG was only able to win 2 of them. And so did they even beat Beast Coast? They lost to Beast Coast. They lost to Gaming Gladiators. They lost to Team Liquid. They lost to Shopify Rebellion. That was kind of the one that broke the camel's back. That was the bad one. They lost to Tundra 1-2. They beat TSM and they beat OG. So they only beat OG and TSM. So not a very good Group Stage 2 performance. Makes me a little bit nervous coming into the major. The major is coming up in the next, I think, week. I think literally either this week or next week. Let me look at the start date. Let's see. Starts. Wow. Yeah. Starts on the 25th? 26th? Yeah, I think it starts on the 26th. I see the EG plays in 2 days and 10 hours, or 11 hours, really. So, yeah, 25th, 26th-ish. They're playing Gaming Gladiators, so they're playing the team that just won the DreamLeague. Their group stage in the ESL One Berlin Major is tough. It's not easy. They're put in a group with Gaming Gladiators and Team Liquid, and also TSM, but TSM really isn't that good. So yeah, also Team Masters in there and Bet Boom, and so look, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be a tough group stage for them. But if there's one thing that I've learned from the majors and TI and everything like that, it's that just because you perform extremely well in the group stage does not necessarily mean that you will perform well in the playoffs. So honestly, the hope for EG coming into this major is to look. I think the best case scenario is they make it in the top half of the top portion of the group, so that they can go to the upper bracket of the playoff stage. That's the best hope, just because it gives you the most amount of opportunities to play games before you have to get knocked out. But obviously, the lowest bar I can set is to make the playoffs. That's the lowest bar I can set. If they don't make the playoffs, it'll be disappointing. They're a good enough team to where they should be not only making the playoffs, but making deep runs consistently. So they have been doing that. DreamLeague is probably the first time they've really, really like failed to qualify for a playoffs, even though it was only a 14 playoff bracket. You still would have thought EG was good enough to make it. They have the talent, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that'll start in a couple days' time. But yeah, just quick update on the DreamLeague situation. They didn't make it through to the playoffs. Shopify Rebellion. I like to keep updates on them just because they were the ex-EG roster as of last year. They ended up beating Tundra in the lower bracket, and then they lost to Gaming Gladiators because the way that it worked was Tundra was the fourth best team in their state in the second group stage. They went straight to a lower bracket semifinal against Shopify Rebellion. Shopify Rebellion won that game. Then Shopify Rebellion was placed into the lower bracket final. In the upper bracket final, there was Team Liquid and Gaming Gladiators, who were the two best teams in the group stage 2. They played each other in a best of 3. Team Liquid won 2-0. And then Gaming Gladiators got sent down to the lower bracket against Shopify Rebellion. Gaming Gladiators won that 2-0. Gaming Gladiators played Team Liquid in the grand final and in a best of 5, and Gaming Gladiators won it 3-2. Really, really close. So Um, yeah. So overall, pretty crazy event. Not really for EG, obviously they didn't make it to the playoffs, but it goes to show you guys, like when I said earlier about League of Legends and the competitive edge, or competitive, wanting to be the best. I don't know that it's necessarily true. This new roster they have for Dota 2 is probably is got to be cheaper. It's got to be much cheaper than their previous roster that they had for years and years and years. And because these players are young, they're South American young players, so I'm sure they were just happy to even be signed by Evil Geniuses. But you know, uh, so much cheaper roster, but not a better team. Not a better team as of this year. As of this year, Shopify Rebellion's had EG's number pretty much every time they've played. Actually, every time they've played, and they've looked like a better team. So, look, we'll see how it goes. Um, but overall, as of right now, it's been a downgrade. So we'll see. But oh, and one thing I want to mention briefly, because I think it's important to, when I used to bash, I still do to some degree. It's kind of like beating a dead horse. It's just eventually you don't want to keep talking about it anymore. But I criticize the marketing team on EG frequently. But they actually have been making really, really cool videos regarding the Dota 2 team. I think they've got 2 or 3 videos, maybe 2 out at this point. Kind of just following the players, talking about them joining the team and whatnot and everything. And it's actually been very cool, some very cool videos. So you know, go check those out. I don't know if it's a separate YouTube channel. Yeah, it is. It's Evil Geniuses Dota 2. Go check their YouTube out if you want to learn more about their Dota 2 team and their South American Dota 2 team. And yeah, they're Lima. They're vlogs from the Lima Major. So I highly recommend checking them out. I've watched them and they're quite good. And it's nice to kind of get to know the players a little bit better because they are so distanced from the organization, being in South America. They don't obviously go to North America. They don't go to the headquarters at EG. They're completely separated from, at least I would imagine they're completely separated from, from the actual main organization. So, good content, and I'm happy to see it. And it gives me hope that maybe Counter Strike can get that stuff because I feel like they've really been lacking content. Not, no, I don't feel that way. I know that way because it's obvious. You just look at their channel; they have basically no Counter Strike videos whatsoever. So, it's one of those where it's like, you can't, you can only have so many excuses at this point. So I'm really happy that they have content surrounding the Dota 2 team because I felt like it was always a division for EG that was, the fans in Dota 2 really love EG, but there's not a whole lot of like outside exposure to the team. It's pretty hard to learn about Dota 2 sometimes. You really have to go looking for it, and so hopefully this kind of helps generate some publicity towards the Dota 2 team because they're very good. They're probably the best esports team that EG has. So if you care about that, then please, please, please check out the content. Evil Geniuses Dota 2 YouTube channel for some nice content to get to know the players. All right, let's move on to Valorant. Trucking right along here. Let's call it maybe VCT Americas. All right, man. This is quite the up and down roller coaster. Not really. It's mostly down, but there's a few upsides that just came up last week. Being more specific, yesterday. But I think it's important to kind of start from the beginning. I haven't actually talked about the Valorant team in quite some time. I don't think I talked about them since they lost. I mean, I don't think I even talked about the lost to 100 Thieves. Now that I think about it, I think that's when I was getting ready to post a video. It was either then or maybe it was after they beat Crew that I hadn't done an episode. But I guess in short, my main problems with this team are role related. And understanding the vision for this team because they only have 2 veterans on their roster in Ethan and BCJ, who were initially both on the starting roster. But as of the past week or two, Demon One has been getting the spot over BCJ, and Jogamo has been switched onto the Smokes role. it's just so you've lost a veteran player, but you've replaced them with a young player, but then now you've had to change the roles because Jogamo is playing Duelist, but now you want Demon 1 to play the Jet, so you need Jogamo to play Smokes. Unless it's a map where Raze is prevalent, aka Split or Fracture, in which case Raze gets played by Jogamo and then Demon 1 plays Controller, typically Brimstone. It's just a little confusing. What's the point of having 10 players on your roster? They don't even have 10 players. The idea was to have 10 players on the roster. They don't even have 10. They have 9. I don't know why they don't have 10, but they have 9. It's been this way for since they announced they were going to do a 10-man roster. How are they like? How does scrims work? Like, are these other 4 players doing anything? Like, what are Apoth, Reformed, Screwface, and now BCJ doing? Like, I don't know. Like, are they scrimming? Are they doing anything? Like, I'm assuming they're doing something, but like, I don't know. Like, it's hard to tell. Like, I worry the most for Reformed. I don't know, and Screwface. I don't know that these guys are ever going to get playing time. Demon One obviously is, and he's been performing extremely well. But Apoth, man, he seems like the next obvious one to move into the team, considering you've got people playing unfamiliar roles. Like the whole idea of a 10-man roster, in my opinion, would be that you can change playstyles and you never have to worry about somebody being in an uncomfortable role because you should always have players who can play different roles or maybe play the similar roles but play different playstyles. And so you can mix up playstyles by adding and removing players into your roster, kind of like just I don't know, maybe like a jigsaw puzzle or something, like being able to change your form and alter to whatever situation fits the meta, right? Because meta changes happen very frequently with new agents coming into the map pool, new maps moving in and out of the map pool. So it's like it makes sense to me to have 10 players if you're gonna use them, you know? But the roles are just weird. Like, I don't really know what Screwface plays. I mean, when I look at his profile, it looks like Jet, Sova, and Raze, and well, I'm sorry, you're never gonna get put on this main team on this main roster if those are your top 3 agents. Like it just doesn't seem likely. Um, because we have the initiator role more than covered between Calm, obviously, who seems to be the main option for Initiator no matter what. Ethan can also play Smokes and Initiator. BCJ was one of the best initiators in the world last year, which is why it's so surprising that he's one, not on the main roster, and two, not even if when he was on the main roster, he wasn't playing Initiator. So you have Calm, Ethan, BCJ, like who the heck? Like, you're not getting put on this roster. You're not going to replace Demon One or Jogamo on the Duelist. I don't know. I mean, shoot, you go to Reform's fucking page, and for the last 60 days he hasn't played an official. Last 90 days he hasn't played an official. You know, like, and Reformed plays KJ, Viper. Like, where's his role on this team going to be? Like, are these players doing anything? Are they ever going to get a chance onto the main roster? Because it doesn't seem likely, and it doesn't even seem like it's very much like we have one player who here's our duelist player or something, and then we have like a backup duelist, and we have like a controller and a backup controller, and it's not like that. It's very much like there's a lot of overlap in the initiator, sentinel, controller roles. Those roles have a lot of overlap with this 9-man roster. Apoth is the only young player that I can see potentially moving onto the team at some point, in addition to Demon One, because he plays controller, and and so it would make sense to potentially um, say Jogamo, if you're going to be playing controller, if you're going to be playing Smokes, well, why don't we just replace you with Apoth, who plays Smokes all the time, right? So we have a specialist in the role instead of someone learning an entirely new role. Just because of this is the way that the meta works right now. Because look, the meta could change. Chamber could come back into the map pool or into the agent pool, and all of a sudden the playstyle changes completely. And guess what, Jogamo? You're not playing Smokes anymore. You know what I mean? So like, it's just I don't understand what the goal is with all of these players. Like, what are you doing to develop these players? This is what I'm talking about again with talent development. Like, are you actually developing this talent? Are you making them better? Or are they just going to sit on the shelf and lose any value they had. And then eventually, when they want to leave EG, they don't have anywhere else to go because nobody's going to want to pick them up even in the Challenger League because they don't know who they don't know who these guys are. They haven't seen them play an official in so long that their value has dropped. So just signing young players doesn't mean you care about them. I mean, look at what happened with EG White in the Counter-Strike division. Like those guys didn't go to many events and then they ended up getting dropped. They just basically what happened was, yeah, they got backed by by an organization with a salary, but they were receiving a salary, but they weren't able to go qualify for a major. They weren't able to qualify for an ESL Pro League. They weren't able to qualify for a Blast Showdown or something like that. It's like they lost opportunities. They lost their value a little bit. And it's just like I don't get why it's even worse in the Valorant scene because there's nothing for these players to do. They can't compete in anything under the EG banner, considering the EG team's already in the main they're already in the partnership league. So I just don't that's the main concern with this is I don't understand why they have all of these players if they're not going if they're gonna have like why have players like in my mind, if you have 9 to 10 players, you should never have a main roster that has any type of role issues because you have 9 players, you have 10 players. You should be able to mix and match and find the right play style with the right players. No player should be learning a completely new role, especially Jogamo. The only reason the Jogamo hasn't been replaced is because they sometimes use him on some maps with Raze, and then on top of that, Jogamo is so individually talented that they're not going to want to just replace him. But at the same time, does it makes is it what's the cost benefit analysis between Jogamo playing a brand new, entirely new role to him, or bringing on a young player who was very good and plays the role and is comfortable with the role? Like I don't know. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's very confusing, and that's the main concern with this roster. There was some criticism. I think George mentioned it, and some other George Geds and some other people were bringing up like, oh, if EG doesn't perform against Crew or something, like they need to just get rid of Potter or something. Like Potter might be the problem, and it's like Potter's not the problem. Like it's not her fault. Not in my mind. I mean, I don't know that she was the one who came up with this 10-man roster idea. I mean, if she did, then yes, the blame falls on her. But I don't know that she is. And frankly, look, the ideas that they have are great ideas, and so I don't really think she is the problem. I think the fact that you signed 9 to 10 players is the problem. Without 9 to 10 young players, I mean, not all 9 to 10 young players, because obviously BCJ and Ethan are experienced, but so you've signed, in theory, right? You signed 10. If you sign another young player, assuming that's the case, you have now signed 8 young players with not enough veteran players to develop them. And then not only that, but they don't have a place in the team at any point because there's too many overlapping roles. And so it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I worry for Apoth and Reformed and Screwface in particular because I just don't really understand. Like if Apoth's not going into the roster now, when will he ever? You know? So yeah, that's the main concern for this team, I think, is just the role issues. And gameplay wise, it's the lack of adaptation mid game to prevent from choking because that has been a frequent problem with this team. They put themselves in good positions and they just choke. They just choke games. 100 Thieves series, not too much to talk about, honestly. Haven, 13-9. 100 Thieves had it under control pretty much the whole time. Icebox 13-5. Demon 1 played. He had some promise. He looked okay. But overall, another horrible series from Jogamo on a controller. Just why is he playing controller? It just doesn't make any sense. 5-15 on Harbor on Icebox. Now, some of you may not care about that because Icebox is getting taken out of the map pool. They go to play Crew. This was a showdown of the two shittiest teams in Valorant in the Americas League. This was a must-win for EG. If you lose this, like it's just like that's just so embarrassing. Not only is it embarrassing, but it's like roster changes. Something has to change. Like you can't keep this roster. It's not good enough. Um, and they ended up winning 2-1, which is a little bit closer than I would have liked. But it's because they went on Pearl and they just well, I'm sorry, they went on Pearl and they had a massive comeback out of nowhere. They were down. Let's see, they got 9-3 on the first half. They were down 9-3, end up coming back, winning 13-11. Insane, insane. Um, this was the only map that Jogamo has looked good on a controller. I think we'll look at the Furia series in a bit, but I don't think he was particularly amazing on the controller against Furia. But it was weird. His playstyle was really weird on the harbor, using the cove to just be super aggressive, and it ended up working. Um, just thrives in the chaos. That's the kind of player he is. Which is why it's just so strange to see him on harbor and controllers. So very weird overall. But it was his best map on the agent, and yeah, they ended up getting the comeback win, which was nice. Ascent, they barely lost. They choked this one. This one they choked. Um, they were up, let's see, 9-4 after the pistol of the second half. Ended up losing that game very poorly. They definitely should have won it in two. They did not. They choked. Demon 1 looked good. Jogamo on the smokes again on Omen looked horrible. 10-17, just the worst player on the whole fucking server that map. Ethan didn't have a stellar performance either, to be fair. Also, sorry, just thinking about this right now, a little bit of a side tangent. Calm had one of his most shocking series versus 100 Thieves. It was terrible. It was awful. I think he maybe got 10 kills. It was terrible. This week against Crew was much, much better. He performed much better, but that series versus 100 Thieves was probably the worst game he'll ever play his entire life. It was horrible. Anyways, moving back to Crew series, they went to Fracture. The defense side was good, but a little bit back and forth. They ended up winning the first half 7-6. Went on to their attack side, and pretty much they lost the pistol and they won. They lost the pistol round, they lost the follow-up round, and then they just won out the rest of the rounds. Very good attack side, 13-7. Fracture looks like a good map for them. Calm 22-11 is fantastic on the Sova pick on Fracture, a very niche pick. You don't see teams picking Sova on this map, but he always finds value with it. It's honestly incredible how well he plays this agent in general, but also just on this map. I mean, it's unreal the impact he has. Demon 1 looked particularly really good on the Brimstone. Good utility, didn't look out of place at all. Jogamo on the Raze, this is the role he should be playing. He's fantastic on Raze. It's just when you take him to the controller role where things go south. But Jogamo is probably one of the best players in the world on Raze. I really believe that he is that talented. Ethan, did his thing, good util, solid, and then Boostio, obviously doing a decent job, obviously calling on that attack side. So overall, I think leaving the Crew series, it was a 2-1, but it should have been a 2-0. It honestly, EG was the better team. It was obvious watching the series; they were the better team, and they deserved the win. So, but the question was, okay, you've done that against Crew, the worst team in the league, but like now you're playing Furia, which was hyped up to be the best team in the league, or at one point was hyped up to be the best team in the league. Then they played Loud and got destroyed 2-0. And so it was kind of like, okay, Furia, you lost 2-0 against Loud. Here you go. Here's a layup EG. You should knock this one out of the park 2-0. Super easy, super clean, and move on with your day. That is not what happened yesterday. EG took the fight to Furia and looked fantastic. They looked really good. This is by far the best series they've played of 2023. The coordination was fantastic. The players looked really good. And it just sucks. They just weren't able to close out maps that they should have. Frankly, they should have won every map that they played. Now, obviously, if they had played every map that they played, it would have been a 2-0, but not a 2-1. But they really should have. They really should have won every single one of these maps. And it was unfortunate to watch them fall apart at the end, as they always do. It is one of the problems with this roster in terms of their gameplay. For some reason, they crack under the pressure and they never seem to close out games. It's really hard for them to close out games. It's I made a joke, challenge, close out games you should close out, challenge, impossible. Like they just can't win them. They just can't. Boostio on this first map on Ascent was fantastic. had some incredible highlight plays, just out of this world. Um, Looked really, really good. Overall, the game on Ascent was pretty spectacular, although I will say the defense side could have been much better. They started off super hot, 5-1, and then they just kind of fell away on the defense side. I think there was a timeout, and then after that, it just wasn't the same. I felt like they could have done much better on their defense, closing that half out. It really cost them going into the second half, where Furia kind of was picking up, trading rounds, 2 rounds for Furia, 1 round for EG, 2 rounds for Furia, 1 round for EG. And then, EG made a nice rally at the end of the half to bring it into the tie, to put it to overtime. But yeah, and then in the overtime, the first overtime was back and forth, and then the second overtime, this is what frustrates me. This is the moment where they collapsed, man. In the second overtime on their defense half, they get free picks. They're up 5-3 in player count on the defense round. 5-3 player advantage, and they just threw it away. I think somebody got picked off on Cat, and it just, I don't know. It just all fell apart. I think Calm got picked off on Cat. He was shoulder peeking the catwalk angle, and with his dart out, and he peeked out too wide, and the guy happened to timing him, and he got killed, and then it just fell apart towards the B bomb site, and just like they just lose a 5v3 in the most unbelievable way possible, and then the next round, it just kind of sapped the mood out, and it just didn't really happen for them. But easily a map they should have won. They definitely should have won that defense round, and then they would have put themselves in a great position to close out the game. So I don't know. I think my biggest problem, one of my problems on their defense side, was that they kept going for the same aggressive plays. It happened too often. Like in one of the beginning rounds of the EG game plan, they had a play where Jogamo on A main he threw a smoke on the one way, and then he teleports into the smoke on the one way on top of the wall. And the first time he did it, he got a pick on the enemy Omen on Khalil, and then was able to get out, and it was a really cool, really sick play. But then, like a couple rounds later, he does the same play again. He just gets punished, and it's like you can't possibly expect to do a play like that twice and have it work twice. Do something different. Do some different type of aggression. Um, it was just strange. They did that twice. They also did another play, and I hate when they do this play. I have not seen this play has only worked one time, and it worked the second time they did it in this game, and it honestly worked out kind of because of luck. It just ended up being that Demon 1 ended up getting multiple kills. But they have this play where they go really aggressive into B main on defense, and it's Demon 1 who starts off with the aggression. He pushes as far as he can. He has a couple, like 2 people behind him. He throws a smoke, like if you know, outside of A main, they have like that little it's not even like a building. It's kind of like a small little building tent thing, and it's typically where like a Killjoy will put their turret to watch B main. And what he'll do is he'll smoke in front of that building, dash into it to break the line of sight from like tile, or from like back in attack spawn, where sometimes people will hold the angle. So he's trying to create space. He'll dash into that smoke, and then they have the other 2 players throw utility and kind of help fight with Demon 1, and now they're fighting from 2 angles instead of one. The problem is it hasn't really worked, and honestly, Demon 1 kind of just dashes into a location that's very easily spammable, and there's only one angle he can peek from. There's really not too much he can do, and so it almost never works. He usually dies. There's Especially if there's multiple players there, he just gets spammed down. There's nowhere else for him to go. It's pretty easy to counter, really. It's not a very intuitive, amazing play. It would work better if they did that, but they had some type of crunch coming in from tiles, but they don't do that. And so it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And I personally think it's a really stupid play. It happened to work the second time they ran it, but I don't think it was a repeatable thing. And I was even more frustrated that they even tried to do it twice, because that's a kind of play that not only have I seen them do that in previous weeks, but it hasn't worked, and teams are going to be ready for that play, especially if you're playing. Like, if I was joking around with my friends while we were watching, I was like, okay, well, if you're watching an EG demo on Ascent, you just have to know they're going to go for those two plays, and they do it consistently. So like, it's super easy to counter. Like, they've done that jet dash play like so many times. So it just didn't make a lot of sense to me why they did those twice. Um, it frustrated me. You got to find unique ways to be aggressive, or maybe do an aggressive play in the mid round instead of in the early round. I don't know. But it just frustrated me watching that a little bit. Um, and then the overtime round where they had the 5v3 and choked it, that was also very frustrating to watch. But overall, like, I think Boostio stepped up very, very good. Ethan was good this whole series. Demon won as well. Calm played pretty well in terms of his utility, and even had some pop off maps. Jogamo on Ascent was 15 and 22 on the Omen. Just more evidence that I just don't understand why he's playing this role. He's not comfortable with it. I understand it takes, like, they're gonna give me the argument, oh, it just takes time to get used to a new role, but like, you shouldn't even be having to do this mid-season. Like, bring in Apoth, just bring in Apoth, um, you know. But whatever. They moved on to Fracture. Fracture's a good map for them. Their attack side was very strong, 8-5 attack side. It probably should have been 9-4, honestly, on that last round. But ended up being an 8-5 attack side, and they kind of closed it out on their defense. Nothing really to complain about here. Calm, fantastic on the Sova, so much value from that. And yeah, Jogamo, Ethan, and Boostio all played extremely well. Demon One had an off map, but you kind of expect that when he's playing the Brimstone on Fracture, and it's not his role, right? Which, again, why? But that's just how it is. And at least Brimstone is a little bit easier to play than Omen. Not as much of a curve, of a skill curve there or whatever. So, um, yeah. Plus, it was a map that Furia literally hadn't played since like the end of last year in August or October or something like that. So, not really too surprised. But EG took that fracture map. Moving on, so clearly a problem with Furia being map pool. Going into the third map of Haven, this was heartbreaking. This was such a heartbreaking, um, or I'm sorry, did I say in the last map that it was an 8-5 half? I'm sorry, that's not true at all. It was an 8-4 half. I apologize. I was looking at the wrong thing. 8-4 half that they closed out. Going on to Haven, they had a very strong attack side, 7-5 on their first half on their attack side. Very good. Um, you know, it was quite strong. But the defense, man, the defense side was just abysmal. It was just abysmal. Losing 5 rounds right off the start just kind of put them in a really bad place. Um, and they crumbled. They crumbled. They had a timeout. Demon One had two of the most incredible jet plays with the jet knives I've ever seen. Uh, I mean, just unbelievable. He had one where he's hitting jet knives while he's like updrafting and turning from flashes on the C bomb site. Um, and he had another one where he's defending C, and three guys come up C long, instantly kills all three of them, peeks out. He was getting frag hungry, gets aggressive, peeking the garage, gets another kill, and eventually at the end of the round gets the final kill on the guy at B. Unbelievable ace. Demon One was fantastic, and honestly, he had just a lot of impact towards the end of the game. Did miss some crucial kills at the end of the game that would have generated a greater advantage, but um, and some misplays and mistimings at the end of the game in regards to him, and maybe it was Ethan. I can't remember who it was on the A bomb site where they just kind of got timinged, and Demon One tried to peek out with the op, but the site hit was already coming, and that kind of sealed the game. I think that was round 22. And I think who was it? DG Zin ended up getting a triple kill, and that just kind of finished out the map. Unfortunately for them, it was heartbreaking to watch, especially because you really felt like EG had put themselves in the best position to win the whole series, and they just couldn't close it. They just could not close it. And when you had that massive momentum swing with Demon One getting that incredible ace, you really thought this is the moment where EG is just they're gonna come back and they're gonna win, and they just couldn't do it. So overall, very disappointing, but an encouraging series when you consider that Furia is considered to be one of the best teams in the Americas League. So look, I'm not saying that means that EG is very good now. I'm not saying that. I still don't even expect them to make or even fight for the playoff spot, the final playoff spot. But you know, it's a good sign for things to come, hopefully. And I can only hope that tomorrow they play loud because it's a super week. They play loud. Look, every team has kind of been getting dumpstered by loud. I'm not expecting anything spectacular. I'm essentially just hoping to God that it's close, that it's competitive, that they show some fight. Because right now, look, before this series, it was looking extremely bleak, and it looks better now, um, but it's not by a whole lot when you consider that. Look, this is only 1 week, or this is only one series, right? I need to see consistent performances against better teams. I didn't consider Crew a better team, and I don't consider, well, I mean, I consider Furia a better team, but I need more consistency. So overall, I was extremely proud of how they played this week so far. Obviously, they're playing tomorrow, but I was really proud of how they played yesterday. It looked so much better, and it was really fun to watch. A little bit disappointing at the end, and Calm's parents were there. That was cool to see them on the broadcast, but shout out to them. But um, overall, looking for a little bit more. Hopefully, this kind of continues into tomorrow's game versus Loud. It would be unreal if we beat Loud somehow. That would be unbelievable. Quick side note, just to give props to Furia, MW Zera is a literal legend. This dude is a monster. He was 67 kills, 48 deaths, 18 assists, was plus 19 in the series. Like, unbelievable. The dude was just unreal. 261 ACS topping the server. Guy was unreal. Played 3 different agents too. All initiator obviously, but all different agents. Guy is just one of the best players in the world. He might be the best initiator in the world, honestly, with how he played. I mean, I don't know how well he's been playing this, in all of VCT Americas, but this particular series, he looked world class. Just looked like nothing could stop him. I mean, if he was alive, you were terrified. Him and DG Zin were just, you were scared when they were alive because they could just go for any amount of highlight play at any moment. Um, but yeah, so all right, guys, that's going to be it for the League of Legends, Dota 2, Valorant sections. I'm going to rest my voice for just a couple of minutes, and I will bring Kurrent onto the pod, and we will talk about the Counter Strike team, and yeah, so stay tuned for that, and I'll catch you guys in a second. Hey, hello everybody. I'm gonna move my OBS out of the way. That'd probably help. Welcome to the CS:GO portion of the podcast. I've brought, we got Kurrent on the show. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Been actually what, 3 weeks?
2 weeks, I think.
Two
Yeah.
weeks? Yeah, it's been some time. Granted, not a whole lot has happened, so it's
For
not
once.
really, yeah, for once. So it's not like we've really missed out on a whole lot of really important news with the EG teams for the Counter Strike division, but there was a lot of really the main story this at least for the main team is that now that Refrezh has been joined on or has joined the roster officially, um, they were playing in some open qualifiers, some cash cups, just some small stuff, just to probably get a little bit of reps in with Refrezh, kind of just to kind of figure out things, build a somewhat of a just get a little a couple officials under the belt. Um, Not anything big, but some easy stuff. And essentially, Refrezh is playing out in Denmark, I think, still,
Yeah.
and has like 100 and like 50 ping, and so uh, not really too much to like in my mind at least when I knew they were playing these events. I wasn't exactly like I don't want to say I wasn't interested because I was, but like I wasn't really taking too much from it because Refresh is playing on like 150 something ping. These events happened like almost directly after their flights from Mexico to wherever they were playing from. Um, I'm sure some of them went to different locations and whatnot, and
Mhm.
some people's flights left earlier than others. So look, it's not like they had any time to really like discuss things really. So I don't know. To me, I didn't really take too much out of this, but man, the second they lost to without warning and in the ESL Challenger Katowice 2023 North American Open qualifier, jeez, and the ESEA Cash Cup um, against Timberman, like people were blowing up on EG and just talking about how bad they are. Why did they sign Refrezh? Essentially there was no way to win. If they hadn't signed Refrezh and they had moved up George, they would have said this team's shit. And since they brought Refrezh, um, it's like a European player over. They're like, well, you signed a European player instead of bringing up George. It's like can't win. Um,
Yeah.
so just doesn't really feel like there was a way for them to actually win the PR battle this time. And yeah, I didn't really take too much out of the losses really at all. It was nice to watch them play, I guess, but like I wasn't really. I'm not too concerned about any of this at all, and I think the criticism that they've received has mostly been unfair. Um, I think a lot of it though kind of echoes what I was saying about the move in the first place with Refrezh, which was that even though I like the move, I did think it was just a terrible look that you're bringing in a player that's not from your academy team. After it, really the problem is like it's not just that you brought in a player who's not on your academy team. Like there's other teams that do that all the time and don't bring in their academy players and sign some other big talent from somewhere else. The problem is you're signing one Refrezh who's on a down point in his career and is probably cheaper. And then two, it's that you keep talking and keep talking and keep talking about how you care about player development and talent development and how you're going to develop the North American scene and this talent pipeline and you're going to do all this stuff with the talent that you have in the region. And then you just don't sign talent or you don't move up talent from that region in a critical moment of the team's, uh, you know, I don't know, lifespan right now. That's the part that's the problem. It looks bad from a PR perspective. Um, Even though I like the move. That's the main issue with it. And so yeah, what are your thoughts on the whole, losing to Without Warning and Timberman and yeah, all this stupid stuff.
Yeah. So I watched the first match of that open qualifier. It wasn't really anything to. It was just like I'm sure it was just a pug team or something. They smacked them. Losing to without warning is obviously not an easy thing to swallow. But if you factor in again that refresh is on like 150 ping, they're probably trying out a couple new things, right? Strategy wise. I mean, of course, things can go wrong, right? I mean, you look at Without Warning, and people are like, "Oh, you lost to a bunch of nobodies." I mean, they're not nobodies. I mean, there's Joel's, there's Spongy, there's Pluto. Like, I mean, those players aren't anything to scoff at. I mean, those guys were on like tier two orgs at some points in their careers, right? They're not anything. to make a joke of, right? Obviously, we should still be beating them. I think ping difference and stuff like that obviously still plays a factor, but and then losing to Timberman, I mean, people making fun of that, but again, Timberman's not a bad team, right? But I hate blaming it on ping when still in realism, like strategy wise, right? We should have a lot more depth than a lot of these teams. But I mean, I'm sure they're not taking it extremely seriously, right? Like this isn't Dallas, this isn't Cato, this isn't EPL, right? Where everything matters. But I'm just happy to see them play some of these events, right? Because for the longest time we had the issue of like we just never saw them play except in the big events, and we were like, okay, what are we gonna do? Because we just bombed out of this tournament. Now we won't see them play for like 3 months. But at least they're playing some of these smaller events and trying to build some chemistry between each other. Um, I think the hate is not warranted, but I agree that I think it was gonna be bad either way, right? Like bringing in Refresh and us losing, they're gonna be like, oh, you just didn't bring anybody up, like like why the fuck you signed Refresh? And I agree that if we would have brought up George and we would have lost with George, they would have said like, oh, like Hex, you should have just kept Hex, or why didn't you sign Valde or Refresh? Like you can't have it both ways, right? Like that's how it's gonna always be with this team at the moment. Is any move is gonna be criticized when something doesn't go our way, because everybody knows better than the team, right? So I'm not super worried. I mean, Refresh obviously didn't have a great showing in the first two matches, but again, playing on 150 ping, if anybody has ever done, I mean, hell, I don't even think like 80 to 90 is like super playable, right? But let alone like 150, and you're playing against not five other people that are all on common ping, and it's just tough, right? Like you can't expect much out of them on a situation like this. I just want to see them really group up and start getting prepped for Dallas overall. There isn't really much to say. I mean, I maybe they play another Cash Cup or something here or there, or maybe they can find the time to bring Refresh in before Dallas, which is what I would hope, right? Because Dallas's group play will come up at the end of May, so hopefully sometime middle of May they can bring him in to NA and just get a boot camp going and have a strong showing in Dallas. Because I think that's when a lot of things are going to happen, right? So because what Dallas is the first tournament after Paris.
I think so, yeah.
So a lot of these teams, like whether they bombed out or not, are going to be using a lot of their like deep strat books, right? There's going to be a lot of like information out there for this team to use, and if they really get on top of it with Refresh on the team, I mean, we can get ahead of some of these teams in Dallas, especially, right? Like there's if we bomb out of Dallas, there's really not any excuses that we can we can make at that point, right? Because once Dallas hits, they would have had ballpark a month plus refresh, because I'm sure that there's probably even they were probably already practicing them with him uh before the move was even official, right? Because a lot of teams and a lot of players do that when it's an unofficial kind of move. I'm sure they were already in talks and practicing a little bit if they could, but I don't know. I think Dallas is going to be the major test on whether this move was correct or not. I think it's unfair as of right now to judge it on a cash cup and a damn open qualifier where one of our players is on 150 ping and some of the matches were like super late at night, right? So if we bomb out of Dallas, then I would take the criticism in stride because, like I said, there's not many excuses. Like they should be having VODs and demos and so much information at their disposal. We already know that they have tons of analysts and coaches behind the team. I mean, a lot of work can be done pre Dallas to really prep this team for it. So I'm I'm not really worried about the two losses, like I said, and just let's get ready.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's I think that's a good shout, and like I do think Dallas will be an important litmus test for this team, and that they have definitely have potential to outperform maybe what their actual average performance level is, just based off of the fact that like you said, all the teams are going to be playing in the major. Um, gives you plenty of time to look at that stuff, and who knows. I don't know if they're going to be boot camping in Europe around the time of the major or not. If they're going to, I mean, if there's any time for them to boot camp, it would be around that time. um, as other teams are obviously playing and whatnot, and I'm sure other teams would. I mean, I don't know. Many of the top teams would want to play them, but I don't know how that works. But like, I don't know if they're boot camping at all before the event, but they definitely have the opportunity in this event to outperform what their what probably their average should be or where they're actually at, just because of the fact that they can counter strat and they can, they'll have VODs that other teams won't have anything really to use to play against EG, um, and so that's an advantage for them.
Yeah.
I would say that even if they lose, even if they bomb out, honestly, I really do feel this way. Even if they bomb out of the event, they need to stick to their word and not change this roster. In my opinion, they shouldn't change this roster for a minimum of a year, basically until the next major, next year. Like, I'm just so sick of the constant roster changes and constantly moving players in and out of the roster. I don't care if it's only one player. It's too much. Like, it changes the structure of the team. It changes the philosophy of the team. I don't want to see any roster moves with this roster at all for the next year, essentially, because I think that has some part to do, with players not being comfortable, players not performing as well as they could. It's just not having a solid structure, to kind of fall back on, and having players that they're comfortable and have been around for a long period of time. I think that's like something that Complexity has used to get much better, is just the fact that that core of players have stayed together for so long. And it was even a thing with the NRG roster way back in the day, was that they just the core of like Breeze, Ethan, Cirque, they were just together for so long, and they were able to develop and create really, really good chemistry. So like, I think from a chemistry standpoint, even if they bomb out of this event, I do think it's a massive disappointment. I do think it's like basically unacceptable, as like the last results have been for like the past 2 years. But like, at this point, I would rather them just stick to what they said they were going to stick to. I don't think, even if Wiz performs badly in Dallas, I don't think you kick Wiz. I think you should just keep him. Let him develop more. Let him actually. A player can't possibly develop in EG of all teams in a span of like 4 months. Like, the team is already massively dysfunctional. The organization has gotten so much bad press. Like, you've put this player in the worst position possible to succeed. Like, you deserve to give him plenty of time until hey, this guy's not going to make it right now. Um, I do I do think, like, as much as I do like the refresh move, I do think I have seen some people make some pretty valid shouts on, like, why not make your like, everyone knows in NA that like opping is not really NA's strong suit. There's not really too many great oppers, honestly. Even historically from NA, it's pretty lackluster overall.
Yeah.
I do think that it's a good shout, saying like, we like EG probably should have, like, and I think they should have done this before they got Wiz, to clarify. Not saying they should kick Wiz, because again, it's not fair to him. They haven't given him time to develop. But maybe they should have, instead of getting Wiz, they should have gotten an international opper, and then they should have replaced, and then keep Hexed or something. You know what I mean? Like, there was other ways they could have done things. Maybe the rifling role shouldn't be the one that you're importing, when really what NA has right now, and what's coming up in NA right now, is riflers. I mean, there's some op talent, but not any op talent that like you could say is 100%, like, or even most of the going to be ready for tier 1 CS. Like, the easiest option for that would have been OC a little while back, and even then OC hasn't really translated into like a tier 1 quality opper. Like, he's good, he's okay, but he's not anything special. So like, it's just one of those things where, I don't want to see any roster moves anymore. I'm tired of it. I want them to keep the same roster and generate a little bit of chemistry. And so, I do hate seeing criticism like they never move up players, they never do this, they never do that, when like literally literally Carpe Diem was signed to move Hext into the main roster, and then Wiz has developed extremely well, and he's moved on to the main roster as well. I think the criticism is justified for EG White. Obviously, they clearly fucked over those players. And signing George, I don't really know that George is much of a talent development, when you consider that I think George was already this good. Like, I don't think him being on EG has like made him significantly better as a player. I mean, maybe it's improved him. Obviously, he's improved over time, but I don't know that it's necessarily more than he would have improved if he was on Nouns. So, I don't really think that that's like I can understand that one, but um, so it's like I don't entirely agree that they haven't moved any players up. Um, but I do understand the concern in terms of talent development. Like EG has been terrible at it. Like they have not developed talent. Um, if anything, they've kind of allowed these young players to get put in the worst positions possible. And then retroactively been like, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't move Text into the main roster as early as we did. Oh yeah, we did move in Wiz like literally a couple of fucking days before our blast event, and then went through the worst period in the organization's history from a PR perspective, and basically just shattered this guy's confidence. Like that is concerning. But I think like I don't know. I think just like overall, um, we'll see. Vorborg has been very active on Twitter in terms of talking about why the roster moves were made and why certain decisions were made. He's also said on Twitter that he was going to post a YouTube video, presumably, talking about it. That hasn't come out yet, but I'm hoping that it comes out relatively soon. I don't know. But it would be interesting to hear from him directly. Or at least, I mean, he has been direct in terms of his Twitter responses, but in a video format where he can kind of take all of his collective thoughts and like look at, okay, this is what all the criticism has been about, and like he's even said like that he thinks most of it is justified, especially when you look at the results. I don't think Vorwerk has ever been like, oh, these results are fine. Like, I'm okay with these results. Like he's been very clear that the results haven't been good enough. Even mentioned to me in on the podcast like a couple like 6 or so months ago that like he doesn't know what happened in the previous lineups, but that clearly the results just weren't good enough. And so he didn't want to speculate on what was going wrong in those teams, but he understands what EG should be placing at and what they should be doing as an organization. And so, um, yeah, hopefully we get that video that comes out. That would be nice to hear from him, especially when you consider just from a general perspective that there's been no EG CSGO content in literally like a year. It's actually at this point literally the only esports division that EG has that hasn't had like any videos posted about it in ages. That used to be Dota 2, but now it's CS:GO. Like CS:GO is literally like they don't do any content around the teams. I understand it must be hard considering how bad the team has been, but like
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. Overall, I think it's a shit show, but I think look, this is the time for them to rebuild. This is the time for them to get their structure in place, to develop layers. I think this is really the time. Like it felt like before watching this team play that they had they had a style of play, but it didn't go too much deeper than that. Like they didn't have layers to their game plans and their gameplay. I think Kerrigan even mentioned this. He even mentioned that like they even have like a EG default, which was mental when that quote was released, but like it's because Kerrigan understands that okay, like EG beat Heroic and they did it somehow, and it was because of the way that EG plays is they like taking map control without really expending much utility. And so like they kind of just have individual players make their own decisions based on what they're seeing around the map, and that's something that like even Vorborg has mentioned in replies and stuff like that. Is that it's a very like it's a structure where you need players to make decisions on their own, which is obviously something that a player like Breeze is going to struggle with, right? A player who is incredibly talented, and even players like Taz even said like I don't understand how this EG team isn't performing to a higher level considering the talent on the roster. Who else? I think Daps on a podcast with
Yeah.
Thorn said like Breezy's the most mechanically gifted player I've ever played with. You know what I mean? Like he has the talent, but it's just obviously the decision making is a little bit of a problem in a system like this. Like he's never been the most cerebral, player, and he's lacked motivation in previous years. So it's something that he's gonna need to build up over time. And I think that like so it's just like they have a style. It's just do they have the layers and the cohesiveness as a unit to really develop that style? Because I don't think there's something wrong with the style. It's obviously any style has its inherent flaws, but if you play any style well, it can work. And like that's how Counter Strike works. You have teams that play different styles, and the ones that are able to develop their style and perfect their style, they rise to the top, at least strategically. And it helps them perform better. So like, um, yeah, I just think this team needs more time to develop layers, and really now that they have roles and Refrezh can kind of bring his ideas to the table, and I think as long as they all are able to communicate well, I don't buy the whole too many cooks in the kitchen in the sense of like I do think that it can be a problem, but it can be managed as long as the people, I think it comes down to communication, right? Are the coaches, the analysts, the players, your in-game leader, your players like Automatic who like to make in mid-round calls, people like Refrezh who have experience calling and being on top teams like Heroic, Vorborg, your coach, and other analysts and whatnot like Sheikh Zula and maybe even Malik to some degree. I don't know how involved he is in that, but are all those people, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to share the same vision, but they just need to be able to communicate their thoughts effectively, and be able to compromise on things and come up with the best solutions in their mind, and be able to communicate well enough to direct that to the players in a well structured way. And so that's, I think, the biggest thing with this. I don't buy just looking at it and being like, well, it's a new idea because there's never been this many coaches, and so it can't work. There's too many cooks with too many different ideas. I think as long as the communication is strong, this can work. And Nealon's a very young IGL, and so he has a lot to learn. And he's a hardworking IGL, but he's very young. And so I just think this is one of those things where like it's just going to take some time. They need to develop their layers a little bit more, and that's why they need consistency in their lineup so that they can really develop these and that they don't bring in new players every 6 months that then have to completely learn the structure all over again and potentially change roles, because everyone's going to communicate and play. Even if you play the same role, you might play different positions or communicate differently. And so I think that's the key, is just keeping some consistency, at least in the roster lineup. Now that you've brought in Refrezh, you can add more ideas to the plate and really develop your play style better and more, and create, instead of creating a more deep understanding of the play style, developing it, making more layers so that you actually have like responses to when teams try to counter you or when teams are doing certain things to blow up your setups or blow up your strategy and how you take map control. So um
Yeah, so yeah, to
yeah.
go off that, I think keeping the team together is going to be like pretty important at this stage. I know you said give it about a year. I'd probably say somewhere around there. If they did a little short of that, I wouldn't be extremely upset. Obviously it all depends off how the matches go and things like that. Um, in terms of like what we possibly could have done prior to like Wiz signing, I think you're right. Like maybe we could have pulled a complexity and went out and gotten like a Halzerk or a Mantu, right? Like an international offer. Because I mean, in theory, I think everybody's even agrees that OC has not been the best. Obviously, he hasn't been bad, right? Like he has his good days and his bad days, like anybody else. But I mean, in terms of NA opping, we haven't had anybody really since like Ska that is, and I guess JDM, right, way back in the day.
Yeah,
And Dust Two just wrote a fucking article about his JDM return.
I know, please don't.
Goo- that's the
I'm
goofiest
sorry,
fucking
please
shit I've
don't.
ever seen in my life. But yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, just keeping this team together and keeping them to be cohesive, right? I mean, even way back when you did your interview with Vorborg, right? Like this this default style of play, right? It's super high reward, but also high risk, right? Because if
Yeah.
we lose picks on T side, especially just in our default, right, we're already at a disadvantage right off the bat. So I don't know. I think this team has a. I always say this team has a lot of potential, but I like basing that off the fact that even Taz, right, like you said, like he was like, I don't know how this team isn't doing well, right? I mean, we have Automatic, we have Breeze, we have Neil, and now we have Refresh, right? I mean, Wiz, you can get a pass, right? It's only been there for 4 months. And realism, believe it or not, Nealon hasn't even been there for more than a year, right? We haven't hit the year mark
Nope.
with him. So I think because of all the PR that the team has gotten on all that, I think it makes the situation look a lot worse than what it truly is. Obviously, we're at the bottom of the barrel, right, at this point, but it almost feels like all the hate and like the negativity, the criticism that's being made is like of a team that's been together for like fucking like years, right?
Yeah.
Like it they're acting like this team's been together for 3 years and just are too stiff to pull anybody up or make changes. that's just not how it is. I mean, to really implement a system, right, as an IGL, it takes time. I mean, you can see that with Kerrigan, right? When Kerrigan left for Mouse, even though he had a pretty good impact off the bat, they still did not have that good of showings for a very long time. And even when he was brought back to phase, he had to take time. He had to take months and effort to really make that team what it is today. So I think keeping this team together is going to be really important. I think I'm really curious on how CS2 is going to affect a lot of these teams and if any changes will be made solely because of CS2. I doubt it, at least not at like the top level, right? But because I don't really see anybody, nothing's game changing, right? It's not like
Yeah,
it's going to be
the
one of those
changes aren't big enough,
situations.
probably.
It's not like one of those where it's like, oh well, Sonic was like one of the best CS Source play or 1.6, right? Like players in his day, and like, oh, this player was really good on Source, but turned into shit in Go. I don't really think too many changes are major in the game to say like, oh, that player was only good on Go, like he's gonna be trash on CS2. Like that's just not how it seems so far. Obviously, the game's not fully out, so we can't have a full judgment on that. But um, yeah, you had a good little piece there. I think it's funny that it has probably now been over a year since EGCS content has come out.
Oh, yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah.
Like it's I DM'd Vorborg a while back on the content. I don't know if I mentioned it on here, but it's fair that it's hard to bring everybody in to
Oh,
do a
definitely.
shoot or do stuff like
Oh, yeah.
that, especially when everything's so like Eurocentric, right? Like, can you really convince the 5 guys that just spent a month in Europe and only have 4 days with their family to come out for 2 of them to Seattle and just shoot, like, a video real fast, right? So, um, and I've been watching the landscape. There's been, unfortunately, a lot of, like, esports layoffs, right? Like, a lot of people are losing their jobs, unfortunately, in esports. That's just the way the world is at the moment. Um, I, uh I actually had a contact that knew Valens through working at EG previously, and I even told him, I was like, "Dude, I offered to do a vlog at Dallas for them for free, essentially, just so I could see content." I literally said, like, "I do not care if I get paid. I want content for this fucking team. I'm gonna be there. If you guys don't like it, fuck it." And dude, like the fact that I heard nothing back from that was astounding because my contact through him, that knew Valens he said he had a really nice talk with him, and even Valens had agreed that like there's no content around this team to like
Yeah.
create any hype, and that he thinks content should be more active, right? And that he would send my proposal basically up the ladder, and the fact that I didn't even get like a just a no back was
Yeah.
like just like kind of shocking, right? So,
I'll even
um,
say, like,
yeah,
when I did the podcast with Vorborg originally, it was something that he had reached out to me, said that he wanted to do it, but it was something that he had to get approved from. I mean, I knew obviously, in any organization, you're going to have to get stuff like that approved by the organization, but EG is very particular when it comes to content that they'll allow. Like, I would imagine that it would be very difficult for me to do that interview again, based off
yeah,
of the things that I've said and just kind of, I'm sure they're
right.
not fond of me at this point. But to put this into perspective a little bit, guys, I just pulled up EG's YouTube channels. I don't know that I pulled up all of them. Let me see. There might be one that I'm missing here. So let me double check. That's pretty much all of them. So, Evil Genius's main YouTube channel, guys, has 119,000 subscribers. For reference, guys, like that is nothing. Like that is literally nothing. Um, I'll look up. It's not the most. I mean, I'll just say this. I've looked up 100 Thieves YouTube channels. I've looked up Cloud9's YouTube channels. I've looked up Team Liquid's YouTube channels. Guys, typically their like Valorant division will have more subscribers than EG's main YouTube channel. Um, the Dota 2 EG channel has 4.6k subscribers. 4.6k. Their Valorant channel, this is the shocking one, guys. Valorant, guys, this like up and coming game that like everyone is obsessed with, right? 577 subs on their YouTube channel. 577 subs. Like a couple days ago, it was below 500. Granted, that's crazy, especially when you consider like the Valorant YouTube channel is actually like pretty good. Like they've created like 48 videos or something like that. I don't know. They've created like a decent amount of videos, and like the recent ones with like the players doing like I don't know like little drawing mini games and stuff. Like it's actually been really funny to watch. Really good content. Um, and it's like they have 500 subs. Like that is so low. I mean, if like you look up any other like this is supposed to be Evil Geniuses, guys. This is supposed to be like one of the biggest, if not the biggest, esports organization in North America. Their numbers can't even come close to any of the other organizations. It's not even close. Um, I'll even throw in the Creator Collective, 712 subs. Like, guys, that might just be fucking employees. Like, honestly, like that is nothing. You know what I mean? Like, that's nothing. So, yeah, just to kind of reemphasize that a little bit, like the content is extremely lacking from this organization. They have exactly zero clout going for them at this point. It's really, really bad. It's reached a critical state. It's probably hurting. It's probably another reason why sponsors have been leaving EG, to be honest. And then, on top of that, and what I will say is like like I do understand that it's hard to get for the CS team. It's hard to get camera crew and whatnot to go with the players and like record videos and whatnot because you're traveling all the time and the players live in different locations and sometimes they all go home and whatnot. But like I tend to not have as, and I also have sympathy for the fact that, like, look, maybe not the best 3 months to follow evil geniuses. I don't know, like something about not qualifying for a qualifier for a major, something about having as many scandals as has been happening with EG over the past couple of months. Like, I understand, probably not the best time to have content. But what I will say is that Team Liquid seems to manage just fine. Team Liquid seems to put out banger content, amazing Counter Strike vlogs. They've been doing it for years to the point where they literally had um when I believe it was like Stubby 2K or Twist or when somebody left or something like that. It was like they had like this massive like 2 hour fucking video, just kind of that was like about following the team over the past like 2
Yeah.
years or something like that. Like it was unreal how good that video was, and it's like EG can surely do more than what they're doing now. Like I understand it's difficult, but like and look, because we're in a recession, they're not going to choose now to do it. But like it's something that I've complained about for years, and it's just kind of staggering that they still haven't figured it out and they still haven't done it. Um, yeah, I will say the marketing is quite shit at the moment. They really need to step that up. They've been doing well in Valorant. They actually are producing new content in Dota 2, like I mentioned earlier in the pod, which has been fantastic. But now they need a little bit of CS content because they don't really have any, and it's kind of sad to see. Um,
Yeah,
so
it's honestly just really kind of demoralizing, honestly.
it's like, how are you going to
Like
generate new fans?
like
Like your team's
slightly. I
losing.
mean,
Like
I
you're
mean,
not going to
yeah,
generate fans,
you can't generate fans if based on results at this
at the
current
moment.
point in
Yeah.
time, right? So I mean, you might as well do it through showing these players personalities, right?
Yep.
Like I don't know if they. I don't want to say this, right? But if they understand what they have here at the moment with like such this unique team,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you have Wiz, who's not like an outspoken guy, obviously, right? But like you have Nealon, right? Like just interviewing him and seeing how his life was coming up in CS, right? Coming from Kazakhstan, Refrezh coming from like one of the most dominant regions in CS like history, right? And
They could do
Denmark
they could do like
talking,
player profiles for their
yeah,
academy
talking about
players and
automatic,
stuff.
like Audi, like how's that been, right? With like going to Valorant and coming back, like we didn't see any fucking statement really about that at all,
Yeah.
or talking to Stan and Rush on like how their perspectives are now that they're on the academy team, just passing on knowledge and bringing players up, and
How did they
it's
not capitalize off of Hexed, man? Like
I mean, yeah. I mean,
how
at
have they
this
still
point,
not
it's
capitalized off of Hexed? Like the dude is just perfect for content. Like
yeah, and I think that obviously the recession hurts, right? Like, I agree that it's hard to find somebody that is willing to probably take a. s- I would assume that the pay would not be substantially well to follow this team around. Obviously, they'd probably pay for things like travel and meals and stuff, but like as base pay, right, for living probably isn't extremely well for something like that. But I mean, at least put in the effort, right? Like, dude, just doing interviews or like you said, player profiles or just doing something, right? Like, Sting, you don't always have to be all in the same place in order to pull some of this content together. Like you could literally get on a Discord call like we do for this, right? And just have a damn interview with somebody,
Yeah.
right? Or so it's demoralizing not to see content around this team when you want to just as a fan and to generate new fans, you just want to see so much more about these guys. Fuck, like like, it seems so pointless to just be like, "Oh, well, what's your favorite fucking candy?" Like, "Tim," and then he just says something, but, like, you know how interesting that is to, like, guys like us that are just, like, all you get to see is the server play, and you just learn something and get closer to these guys without actually meeting them, you know? So, um,
Yeah, I think that is especially be like a big help, especially for like I said, like the academy players. Like,
yeah,
okay, we've just moved X player to our academy team. All right, well, let's get to know him a little bit. Like, let's know who this guy is. Like,
exactly,
where
yeah,
did he come from? How's
like,
his?
especially some of these guys like George, right? Like,
Yeah,
when we were in I forgot what it was, but, like oh, yeah, when Black was playing that Blast Ball, right? And George was doing pretty well, people were like, "Who the fuck is this guy?"
yeah, and
Right?
like I
Like,
think
is Walko, like, who's the
yeah,
IGL? Like,
exactly.
nobody knows,
Nobody
right?
knows. Nobody's gonna take as much time as we do into figuring out that stuff. Like, sorry.
And, like, most people are just gonna pop on the stream, see how they're doing, and if they're losing, they're gonna go talk shit on Twitter, and if they're winning,
Yeah,
they're
pretty
probably
much.
just gonna watch and say nothing.
Yeah.
So I I don't know. I think fun fact, I'm gonna be doing a vlog for Dallas, and I will probably try to make a separate one of doing some stuff with EG. I don't know if they'll let me do it or not. I'm honestly surprised they haven't said shit about the stuff I put on Twitter for them. Uh,
Yeah. No, you actually
to be
you've been
fair,
actually doing like a lot of content. Like
like
honest to
I,
God, you've probably put more content for EG out than EG has, like over the past
dude,
like year.
no
Like
lie, and
you
they're
really
only like
have.
30-second clips, bro. And
It doesn't take much. I mean, like it does take effort, but like I'm sure like
yeah,
it's not like it's taking like this massive amount of time. I would imagine,
no,
right?
dude, it
Like
takes me like maybe like depending on how good I want to make it or like how important I think it is to get it out.
right.
I mean, it takes me maybe a day, dude, like just to make sure everything's clean and looks good. I mean, and for me, all I'm working with is literally fucking demo clips, stream clips, and fucking cool music that I find on like Spotify, right? Like I don't do
Yeah.
anything fucking
And like
insane,
clearly,
and I'm not trying to boast, right? But like
no, no, no.
it seems like a lot of people like just like simple little shit like that. Fuck, even the players like
That's
shit
what I
like
was about to say. Like even the
like,
players like and
I've
follow
had
you
great
based off of it.
reception from,
Like
like, players that are just like, you know, and I'm people know me as, like, this EG fucking guy, right? Just because I, like, make clips for these dudes, and the players like it, right? Like, as much as, like, you can be the most humble fucking player in the world, but if you have some random ass Asian dude in fucking Indiana making a damn short 20-second video of you getting an ace, like, that's gonna be fucking awesome,
yeah, and
right? Like
it's like making content surrounding your team. Like it's it makes the players feel better too. Like you know what I mean? Like they have something that they can that they can look at and be like, wow, like like that's us. You know what I mean? Like that's us. Like
yeah, like, holy shit,
it's
like,
just cool
"Oh,
to see.
man, I did that clip?" Like, "Oh, I did
Yeah,
that?" Or, like, "I said that funny." Like, Hex says, like, he fucking, like, bookmarked my one video of me just, like, combining all him, like, talking shit at Blast, and he said he
yeah,
fucking loved that. He's like, "Dude, like, that was the" he was like, "Breeze didn't understood what I said one time, so I just showed him that video, and he started fucking, like, dying of laughter." And I was like, "Dude, that's
that's
fucking" for
perfect.
me, that's, like, fucking awesome, right? That
Yeah.
they even notice this shit. But it makes me feel even better that they see it, and they're like, "Oh, we like what you're doing." But the fact that this org with fucking Peak Six as their damn
Oh, I
investment
know.
group, and they have so much fucking money, right? And I get it's a recession, and they have budgets, they have limits that they
Yeah.
can like hit. Like you don't spare the time to make at least like one fucking YouTube video of
When
like,
is the last
oh,
frag movie that has been made of EG's Counter Strike team?
on their
Genuinely.
account.
Like I don't know the last time they've done one.
It was
Like
New York. I guarantee you, it was
it
when we won
probably
the
was New
ESO1 New
York.
York.
It probably
I
was New York.
I will
Like
bet my fucking
that's
house that it was ESO1 New
insane. I
York.
bet Complexity even has fucking more content than that. Like
Yeah, I mean, like,
that's
and I
outrageous.
get they're probably like, "Oh, why post a video if we didn't fucking win?" Y'all do
Yeah,
that
but
shit for like LOL and Dota all the
yeah,
time.
exactly. You post
Uh,
content when you're playing bad. Like that's just how it is.
like, yeah. I think it is the last legitimate piece of like frag movie, any
Yeah,
content was probably ESO1. I mean, we get.
that's
I
crazy,
guess if
man.
you want to, I don't even count it, but like the welcome like videos that they did for Russian audience Stewie,
By the way,
I guess,
they didn't even do those for
which
like
they didn't even
Junior
do
and
that
fucking
for
George,
Junior or
right?
Yelin or George
Yeah, it's
or
crazy.
Refresh didn't get one either, which is kind of
Exactly. It's
funny.
like they put out
Yeah,
less
so actually,
content.
funnily enough, the last content is Rush becomes an evil genius 1 year ago.
Yeah, it's like, dude, it's like it used to be Dota that was like, oh well, if you
Dota
know
used
about
to get
EG,
shafted, dude.
yeah, it was like if you know about EG, like you probably haven't heard of their Dota 2 team unless you actually give a shit about Dota, which was crazy considering EG was really good and also like is really well known in the Dota scene. But like, dude, it's like now that's Counter Strike. Like Counter Strike has taken that role of being like the oh that's our shit division that we don't really like to talk about or post any content about because they're bad, and like we just avoid doing any new content regarding that division in general. Like that is crazy to me. That is so insane to me that they literally have
Yeah.
not made a video in like a year, and they haven't even done it. Like I understand the team hasn't been playing well. There's enough clips that you could get to make a small frag movie.
Oh, dude,
Like
fucking
surely.
that's what I fucking do, dude.
Like at least
Like,
just to just listen. I understand it's probably gonna get flamed in the comments, and some people are gonna whatever.
but
But like, dude,
who gives
for the
a fuck,
fans, they'll
dude?
enjoy it and they'll comment and say positive things about it. And like, it's like I'll say like I know this podcast is very critical of EG. It's been very critical of them, and I swear to God, if EG didn't have as many problems as they had and they were performing really well, I wouldn't be freaking so critical of them in the sense of like I would, the criticism would be positive and it wouldn't be as negative. But like I hope and I really do hope, I do mean this, that like at the very least it's content and it's something that, you know, hopefully generates at least more at the very least more eyeballs look at EG because of it, or maybe potentially even brings in new fans. Like I just,
Yeah,
and I hope that if when I do say good things about the players, that the players are actually like, I don't know, like it actually helps them, or that it actually like isn't
yeah,
just like just criticism for the sake of criticism. But like, yeah, I mean, it's just it is staggering that like we probably create more content for the EGCS:GO team, or I mean, if actually we have created more content for the EGCS:GO team than EG has basically. Like
yeah.
it's kind of
So
sad.
I will take the loss on the house. I'm sorry. They did post a Blast Premier Spring Finals highlight. 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Spring final for this year?
Blast and no 2021.
I was gonna say, I was like, no
So
way.
still like 2 years ago, but
Yeah.
not quite ESO1
That was
New
when they
York.
started dropping off and they didn't want to post anything else anymore, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but I think I think content is a bigger thing than and we're all on EG, right? I think there's a lot of teams that probably don't do as much content as they should
Well,
anyways,
it's
right?
crazy that I've seen like eyeballers, bro. They like I even got a response from JW and eyeballers because they posted a player profile for one of their young players. This is a couple months
Mhm.
ago, and I like I was like, oh, like that's really cool. Like I wish more organizations did player profiles of their own. Like player profiles, guys, are something that like every if you ask any CS:GO fan what they miss from like old majors and like just in general
Player
from team, it's
profiles,
player
baby.
profiles, man. Like people love player profiles because it's an intimate way to get to know the player, and you get to learn more about them and their personality
I
and who
mean,
they are and
yeah,
how they
dude. Do
were
you know
raised and
why like
everything
the
like that.
score esports got so popular? Is in my opinion, they did like the story of
Yeah, they did
like
the story of
good
X player,
talents
you
and
know.
like yeah, and
So
like I think that's what made them so popular because it is a really
it's something
interesting
that
thing to
people
see.
like, and so it's
Like,
just
I
like
mean,
why?
they did what Cadian recently, right? They've done
Yeah,
Nico,
they've
they've
done a whole
done all
bunch of
these big
people.
names, but like when it comes to maybe you're a team that doesn't have those big names, like do it yourself, right? Like it,
Yeah, eyeballers did it,
like you
and
see
there
these
was great
videos and they're
quality,
not
man.
doing like yeah, and they're not doing like in person interviews, right? Like you don't even have to have them on the damn video as long as you like tell their story of how they got to where they are at the current moment,
Yeah, that'd be a
and
nice like substitute for it at the very least. And
right,
it's like like eyeball like I'm being serious. Like the eyeballers video was awesome quality. Like
yeah,
I was watching it and I just couldn't help but be like, dude, if eyeballers can do this, like you can't fucking tell me that EG can't do this. Like
exactly,
just think about a player profile on fucking Nealon, bro. That must be
dude, that'd be
insane.
so
Like
sick.
I
I
don't
think
think
that'd be
people
sick.
truly understand the sacrifices he's made to get to where he
Bro, I'm
is.
writing that fucking down right now. I'm gonna
Like
do it.
how have they not done one for him? Like he's 20, what, 22? 23? I don't know. How old is
22.
he? 22?
22. I think his birthday's coming up actually though. No
Oh,
lie.
okay. Well, yeah, he's like 22 years old. He came from Kazakhstan. Like dude is a legend. Like I don't know, like he was grew up in Kazakhstan, and when he played in other Counter Strike teams, I don't even think I think I heard something a
I
while
think he
back where like
moved.
yeah
He
he
moved for
can't even live at
K23.
his house. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah,
can't
he had
even
to
live at his own
move. I
home.
think he even had to move for. I think the last time he was able to stay in Kazakhstan to play was with Simon Gaming, and then he had to move for K23.
Yeah, man, it's like that would be an incredible player profile, and Nealon's such a nice guy. Like that would be so cool. So I know we're banging on this point pretty hard, but like it is just it's just
It
frustrating because it could be so good.
content is deeper than I think what a lot of people take for granted, right? I
Yeah,
think when everything is so
sometimes the content can
centered
get you out
around
of
the
that
game,
hole. You know what I mean?
right?
Of like,
Well, I
oh,
think
our
I think
team is
when
shit. Like
everything's
it takes
yeah,
away from that.
it breaks up the mundaneness of I just wake up and practice and play,
Yeah,
right? And also if you're able to if it is available to do fun videos as a team, right? Like
it's good
that's
team
damn near
bonding.
just that's like team bonding, chemistry building,
I'll tell
right?
you what, the Valorant team looks like they get along really well. Like,
And I think it's just one of those things where it's a underpraised part of a lot of organizations. I think the Liquid team has always been, regardless of who they bring in, whether it's one or two players at a time, they always do a fantastic job of like bringing them up to speed. They all seem to get along for the most part, right? Like, and it's I think it's because of the content, right? If you focus so much on the game, it makes the losses so much worse. I feel like, right? Because it's like, oh, I put all this time, all of my time into doing this, and it just didn't work out. I think it just breaks up the mundaneness of these guys who already have five-figure hours in this game, and they're still. And I can see how you can lose motivation, right? When you're just practicing, playing, and you don't get any break from just like that mental stress of always being in go mode. If you got that once once or twice a month time of, "Oh, okay, this is for the team, but this is more just like relaxing. We're gonna have fun and just like we're gonna play fucking Scriblio
Scriblio
as
or
a
whatever,
team."
yeah.
Yeah, as a team and just like goof around and like have fun, right? Because that just it just builds team chemistry, right? Of,
Yeah. And,
oh, like
I do
Nealon's
think
actually a
like
funny guy, and
yeah.
yeah.
And it's like one last quick example of something of a massive opportunity that they just never actually capitalized on that is too far gone at this point. I mean, they can't do anything about it now. But like, oh, I don't know, maybe when you signed 15 players and had them go all and they all met up in Europe after I think it was after
How do you not do anything?
they went and they had that massive group photo. I still have it saved. They have this massive group photo and they all like went
Yeah.
out to eat and stuff. No vlog or anything. Like that would have been
No
insane.
video,
Like
no nothing. We
that would
just
have been
tweeted
such a
like, "Hey,
cool
we got
fucking
15
video.
motherfuckers in this room." Like, there's nothing,
They
dude.
all went
Like,
outside, took
like,
a group photo on like a staircase or something. They all went
yeah,
out to
that's
eat.
such a
Like that would have been
sick photo.
sick.
You,
Like I
you,
still
you
have
know
it
what's so
saved.
like, you know what's so funny too is like you have to think for a lot of these players, especially like the white players and the EG black players. Like, a lot of these guys probably haven't even met each other like in person. If they don't
No,
qualify for lands, they've never met in person, right? Like, that's like a big moment that you could capture of like, "Oh, like, what's up?" Fucking, like or like Pone has never met, like, Stanislaw, right? And it's like, "Oh, what's up, Stan?" Like, "Big fan," like, like and, like, just these guys greeting
that's
each other and
sick.
meeting one another for, like,
That's
the
sick to catch
first
that on
time in
camera.
person is like, that would've been sick, but no, like, that just didn't happen, and I get they like, from their standpoint, they have business to get done, but, just
You can
stick
find
a
the time.
motherfucker in the corner of the room with a damn camera, and then
Yeah,
hire a outside contractor, like, editor to throw that shit together in, like, a day and just post it, right? Like, I think in, like, vlogs are such, like, a low maintenance, like, video that you have to, like, edit, right? Obviously, a lot of, like, bigger YouTubers do a lot more to it, and, like, they'll put in graphics and shit, but, like, that's not what we're asking for. We're simply just asking for, like, a video of like following these guys around, just seeing how they interact with one another. Like that's all I've ever wanted to see out of this team, and just it doesn't happen. I tried to get it done myself. I didn't hear anything back, so we're back at fucking point zero. I'm probably gonna try to do some shit on my own. I'm gonna get a cease and assist letter from fucking Peak Six, and we're just gonna go on with our lives. But at least I tried, right? Eh, like I don't know, I don't know. I need to probably talk to. I'm gonna try one more time to reach out. Um, Shout out to Mad Cow, aka Nate. He's trying to change his profile, but if you follow me on Twitter, I'll probably try to reach out to him to see if we can get anything going since he is the team manager. But again, like you said with like Vorborg in his interview, right? They have to get all this shit approved. They have to essentially fucking vet what you're doing to make sure that it's. And I
That they
get that
approve
that's
of it.
that's protecting the players, that's protecting the brand and everything. As we know, EG has to protect their fucking brand.
Doing a
Um,
great job so far.
Not even gonna fucking talk on that point, but I would just like to see more out of it. But I think that's fucking good for EG. We fucking went from just like results and expectations and now content, and we're just fucking going on a broad spectrum. EG Black plays Melbourne in a week. What do we
Yep.
expect?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I mean, they actually like genuinely like we were talking about it right before we started the section of the podcast, but like yeah, they can genuinely make it out of the group stage and make it to playoffs. They're in group so context. Um, there's two groups in Melbourne. Group A and Group B. And Group A is where EG Black is. They are in a group with Complexity, Greyhound, and Ecstatic. And then Group B is Bad News Eagles, Movie Star Riders, Rare Atom, and Vertex. So genuinely, looking at this Group A, I actually do think the complexity game could be close. Um, they play Greyhound. I think they might be a better team than Greyhound. I don't know if Greyhound made it to the major or not, but they might be better than
They
Greyhound.
did, yeah.
And then
I think
Ecstatic, I don't really know too much about right now, but like look, I could see a world where they could potentially qualify for the playoffs in the first spot, and I could see a world where they qualify in the last, or they don't
why in the
qualify at all
second
in the
spot.
last spot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I could see it go any way, because I don't
It
know
could go
anything about
50-50.
Ecstatic, and I don't know about Greyhound, so who knows?
I feel a lot better than when
Than last year,
we than last year, but I also feel like the field for last year was probably a little bit tougher,
it
right?
was. There was
I think
OG.
OG was there, Big was there. I think even Complexity was there, and like Ty Lue,
I
right
think
when Ty Lue was still kind of kicking it.
yeah. I think also Pain and Imperial.
I think yeah, like
They
Payne was
made it.
there,
They
right?
made the
So
final, I think, and then Pain won, if I remember correctly.
yeah. So I'm looking at it from last year. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So like Imperial was there, OG, Wings Up when Wings Up was kind of okay. Entropic was the big kicker against EG White, right? But we were in the group with Entropic and OG, right? Even if we
Yeah,
were in the other group
it
back
was
then
tough.
with Payne, Imperial, and Greyhound, I don't know if we make it. But this year looks a lot better than
It looks
last year
promising,
for our
man.
chances. Um, Obviously, I think just being homeland natives with complexity, you always have to give us some sort of chance against that, right? Um, I think we would probably struggle more against the teams like if we were in the other group against teams like B&E and Move Star Riders. I think we would struggle heavily against those two teams. Um, Greyhound, uh, they qualified for the major to be fair, so uh, they're obviously not a bad team. I think it was either Sicko or Alistair said, "I hope people put us 0-3 for the major." I will
Oh,
still fucking do it
I'll do
because
it.
I'm still fucking doing it. Like it's just a tradition at this point. You can't not do it. Anyways, I think if we were in the other group, I don't like our chances. In this one, I do. I think we could beat Greyhound. I think Australia has always been known to have like kind of a more similar style to NA, right? Just because we both have less resources at our disposal. A Static is a Danish team. I do not know a single fucking player on this team.
They've changed the roster
Uh,
quite a bit recent over like the past
so
year or so.
honestly, I don't know what you fucking expect out of this team. They lost to Monty. They beat 500. They beat Big Academy. So they're not like a horrible team, right? But neither are we. I mean, EG Black at this point with Hex subbing in for Stan is like nothing to scoff at, right? So we saw that at Blast when they upset Furia and ended up playing pretty well, right? So and there should be again, this applies for Black too, right? Like on these teams, like the writers, Greyhound, Beanie, Complexity, there should be plenty of fucking information out there for you to prep on, right? Like the major RMRs just got done. There should be a lot of information for them to go over and be able to essentially fucking win, right? Like, I mean, I think it'll be really interesting. I just see someone in the chat, but like fucking like Junior fucking playing on land again. I think that'll be really sick.
Oh yeah.
Uh, really, what this would be Black's first time playing on land together, right?
With this roster, yes.
With this roster specifically,
With
right?
this
So,
specific roster, yes.
and I mean, we're gonna see Rush back on land. I'm sure he's happy about that. Hex is gonna be on land again. This will be George's first time on land
No,
at
he
like a
was
bigger
on.
event,
Well, no, he was because he played the Rio RMR.
right?
That was the one where he
Good point.
popped off and was like dropping 35 on everyone.
Oh yeah, but anyways, I think we have a good shot. Obviously, Complexity and Beanie are probably the two big hitters. Obviously, in this tournament, I don't expect us to win, but honestly, for this black team, my expectations are at playoffs. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Um,
Obviously,
yeah,
anything could fucking happen,
yeah. Who knows?
and any number of things could go on, right? Like for fuck all, we could go 0-3 in the group stages and be fucking done, and we're all just gonna say okay, right? Like at
Yeah.
least they fucking qualified and made it to a land in fucking Australia. But in terms of if we
With
make it to
the potential the
playoffs, I
team has
think it'd be
showed, I
great.
agree. They probably with the potential they've showed, they should make playoffs.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, no,
I
without.
agree with
I
that.
think I think playoffs is probably the line for them.
Yeah,
Uh, Depending on how the seeding works, if it plays out in my head like it would, right? Like complexity would make it, we would make it, and then B and E and Movistar would.
yeah, yeah.
So we would
Maybe
play
maybe we're at them. It might be a toss up
maybe.
between those two.
Ooh, we're at 'em. That's true. Kaze's been
Yeah.
going crazy. My boy Jam Young, my people from the motherland. I'm Korean. I'm not even fucking from China. um, no, but they obviously looked good, right? So there's a couple toss ups in Group B. Um, I don't know if really playoffs we go any further than just qualifying for them, to be honest. But again, like
Who knows?
we've seen some really sick shit out of this EG Black team. If Junior fucking does Junior things and powers up, and
Yeah,
we see Walko call like a really good series, and George also fucking kind of hold down shit on the CT side like he's been doing really well at. Like
yeah. This
we
team's got
could
a
see
lot of
this team
firepower,
pop off.
so
So and like
should be
you
good.
always have Rush. I think Rush is probably still my favorite player of all time. He does not give a fuck what team he's on. He does his fucking job and he does it well. So
Yeah.
and Hex, right? He'll be back on land. I wonder if he'll be shouting. We saw that he was
Ooh,
not
yeah. He wasn't really
shouting
shouting at
at
the RMR, but
he was not
I do
shouting at the
wonder if he'll be doing
RMR,
it
but I'm
on this
curious
team.
if now
Yeah.
on this team he'll be kind of that hype man because I don't think they really have one, right? So
Probably not. But yeah, no, I'm excited to watch them play. I'm really excited for this team. I'm really excited for the. I'm even excited low key for the main team just because there's going to be some time. But um, overall, I think yeah, should be really fun. It should be a really fun event to watch. Starts April 28th, so it starts next or this coming up Friday.
this Friday, yep.
I don't know who their first match is
I don't think
against.
it's
Has it been
released
announced?
yet. No, it is not.
Matches. No, it hasn't. So we'll find out later this week who they'll be playing against, but not in time,
Oh,
obviously, for the next podcast episode. So stay tuned. But like,
oh,
yeah,
dude, I didn't even realize, but the winner of this gets EPO 18 qualifications.
yeah. So if we win, it really doesn't matter.
Wait, so that's goofy though, because that also means if complexity wins, it doesn't matter because they're already.
That's also true.
So does that just go to the second place team then?
It might. It might just go to the best placing. It might get weird if like EG
That would
Black
get
and Complexity
or like in the
are in the
grand final.
final, because then it would be like, well, who the fuck's third? You know what I mean?
Then
Like you
who's
wouldn't.
third, right? Between say like B and E
Yeah,
and
who knows?
Movistar,
It
right?
becomes
Like,
really weird at that
ooh,
point. You're right.
that is really weird because I know right, like Movistar, B and E aren't partner teams, but yeah, that would get really weird. In all fairness though, people have always been talking about um uh fuck, what was I gonna say? As much as they talked about our two teams like playing one another, it is yet to like occur or like Oh, like what's gonna happen when you all win like Challenger League, right? Like we don't fucking know. Nobody still knows because it just hasn't happened.
Yeah, it hasn't happened yet. So it'll be interesting. I'm assuming
No,
hopefully it happens at some point. It would be really interesting to see what exactly happens in terms of what happens in terms of qualification and who moves and gets that position. That'd be really interesting if EG Black and Complexity end up being the top two teams at Melbourne. But
I want some shit to stir up like that. I think that'd be funny to watch.
yeah, so we'll see. But overall, I'm pretty optimistic for it. It looks like it's going to be a fun event to watch at the very least. The main team does not play another game um,
Until
till
Dallas,
Dallas unless they play in any type of like little cash cup or
Cash
something like
Cups,
that.
or I don't think there's a
Although I think,
CCP coming up, man.
yeah, I know right now they're kind of on break. I know Vorborg posted something about going back home or whatever for a little
Hmm.
bit and before they go on boot camp and start practice again. So probably on a little bit of a break right now, but yeah, they'll start ramping it up on their way to Dallas, where we will see them, potentially play some tier one competition. But other than that, that's pretty much it. I will say before the podcast ends, I am going to, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast at the very start, I do have a recording from last week when I had originally done last week's podcast, but ended up scrapping it. I do have like a clip or a little bit of a rant talking about EG and kind of their fall from grace and why I think it's probably the biggest in esports from any organization ever. Um, Kind of sparked off of a tweet that Ryan at Dust 2 made, where doing a poll between Astralis and EG and which one was a greater fall off. Um, so I talk about that. So I will edit that down a little bit just to kind of condense it, and then I will post it on YouTube, hopefully at some point this week, and probably after this podcast gets posted.
It's got to
Um,
be Astralis though, right?
no, it's EG by far. But anyways, so I'll have that edited down and everything. I'll post that on my YouTube channel. I'll obviously post when I on Twitter. I'll post when I release the video. So stay tuned for that. I think that's going to be a pretty interesting listen. That doesn't necessarily have to be like something that like loses value as weeks move on. It's something that can stay there and be relevant for a long period of time. Um, but yeah, other than that, guys, thank you all for showing up. We're going to be doing this hopefully more often, and I'll try to get a better like schedule intact for this because it's new and it's not something that we're used to doing, and obviously schedules can change and whatnot. But yeah, so in the future, expect to have like streams like this, and then I will take the VOD and post it on my YouTube channel. I'll still do, what's it called, timestamps and everything.
Timestamps.
My favorite job. And but I'll do the timestamps and everything, and get that ready for you guys. And so I'd like to say I'll try to see if I can do this today, but worst case scenario, hopefully should be posted by tomorrow afternoon. As always, I'll post on Twitter when it's officially posted. Um, and yeah, I think that's everything. So thank you guys for listening as always, and hopefully you guys like the new stream thing, and then posting on YouTube, so it's on stream and it's on YouTube. Um, so you guys can type in chat. It might be a little bit more interactive for you guys, and yeah. So thanks for guys listening, and we'll see you guys next time.